Yeah, as I said, I've had that before. My place in Tokoroa, I used to camp up beside the window, and you'd like, oh my god, Google was sending me 1,000 notifications. And yeah, the same thing. The sun would sweep around to the west, and yeah, and then you just get straight in the face.
Yeah. During the summer, the sun will come in through this window pretty hot, and in the evenings is where I work most of the time, and it can get pretty hot. The aircon is in our lounge, which is in the neighbouring room, and it doesn't quite reach in here. So some days I'll be sitting in here shirtless and just sweating with this mini fan that I've got next to my laptop, blasting my face, trying to cool myself down. But yeah,
Gentlemanly. And so you're working from home most of the time, Toby?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do when you have to chuck a Zoom on and you're in a sauna?
yeah, pretending like I'm not sweating. Sweating, but when I'm in a Zoom, I'll put a shirt on and I'll just suffer until the meeting's over, and then I'll quickly rip it off again. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, when you sort of messaged me to say, hey mate, I know we spoke, I think it was like a year and a half ago, start of last year, when I did that little run of Michael Brake and Eric Murray, and you had just sort of taken a role with Drug-Free Sport to do with rowing or something at the time, but you're also in family mode too, was it, Toby?
Yeah, we had our first one join us December 2022. So I've got a 2-and-a-bit-year-old now, and we've got another one on the way. So I'll be expanding to a family of 4 soon.
Oh, congratulations! So, I guess that could probably lead us in there. You're in an in-between part of the parenthood, adulthood journey. Who the hell are you today, Toby?
That's an excellent question, and to be honest, I don't know. I'm still working that out. I'm still working that out myself. But I'm someone that's very fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities and adversity that's come my way that's actually been really influential in the character that I've developed and the person that I am today. Like, it's some adversities that I wouldn't wish on anybody else, but at the same time were actually really formative for me, and the value that I took away from those experiences was significant. And so although, I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, I'm extremely fortunate. It is a big part of who I am today. So a mix of, I mean, and it's and perhaps this is an overly simplistic view of it, but I believe that as individuals, we're all just a collection of the experiences that we have. So, yeah.
That is true. So when I reached out to my brothers and dad and I said, "Oh, what do you know about Toby?"
That's interesting.
Yeah, Dad seemed to think you raced against Mark and Hayden Cohen in the single in Mark's final year. He won the 18.5, and I think Hayden won the under 17 and whatever it was, because they were all young. Those two. Were you a young'un in the final year as well? The magic age, sort of the January through April birthday, or were you just run of the mill age group for that?
I'm a June baby, so run of the mill. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're one of the older ones, actually, aren't you?
Yeah. You could argue. I'm really fortunate. Like, through my high school days, rowing wasn't on my radar and never would have been if it wasn't sort of like for a happy accident. I guess that can be a lot of people's stories in terms of the sports they get involved in. But I was extremely fortunate, mate, that throughout my youth, my parents were really supportive of this sort of almost unintentionally adopted this balance as better mindset that Sport New Zealand are really big on these days, which is basically not specializing. It's getting as much exposure as you can to different sports and just having fun along the way. And my parents were that to a T. And I don't know if it was intentional, and kudos to them if it was, but they just were really supportive in getting me involved in a whole bunch of different sports. A lot of the sports you were involved in. So I was swimming, I was playing rugby, and as well as that, there was a bit of cricket. There was water polo. So yeah, you name it. And the only reason I got involved in rowing was because we had some close family friends that were living in New Zealand at the time. They were rowing at a local rowing club, Bay Coast, which train on the Wairoa River in Tauranga, and one of them or the parents said when they were over for dinner one night, well, the kids are training tomorrow, Toby should come along. And I'd heard about the early mornings and the hard graft that is the sport of rowing. And so I immediately said, no, thank you. But my mum and dad sort of having this ethos that they were imposing, really luckily for me, was, no, you're going to go and at least give it a go. And man, I gave it one session. That was that day. I was hooked, and I was just asking to go back after that. So incredibly fortunate. And that family actually, and those kids that I rode with, two of them rode for the US as recently as Paris. One of them was in the women's four for the US. So really, they went on to do some exceptional things in the sport, albeit for the US when they moved back. And that's where it sort of all started. And then I was really fortunate through that rowing career. So I started at that Bay Coast Rowing Club, but then changed to Tauranga, because that's the one that the high school I was at, Tauranga Boys College, was affiliated with, and had some amazing coaches along that way that sort of gave me lots of opportunities in different boats. And eventually there comes a time when you've sort of got odd numbers, and so you have to put someone in a single, and it was me one time, and to both their surprise and mine, it actually went pretty well. And so they kept putting me in the single. And at the time I was like, I'm regretting having done as well as I did, which meant that I had to spend more time in this solo boat by myself, but actually came to love it over time, and also got to race some exceptional individuals as well, like you were talking about, like the Hayden and the athletes that your father coached, and then Andrew and many others.
No, it's pretty cool. I was just thinking about that, like, going from swimming, the early mornings, like, you don't really want to go back there. But it's funny, I sort of left swimming with the water polo and soccer at the time at high school, but I still ended up getting up early and going to do gym sessions with all the rowers on the rigs, and I was there trying to get faster by lifting weights and jumping and stepping up and doing pull-ups and all this core strength stuff. So yeah, it's funny, you never get out of that early morning stuff. And even now, I find myself getting up in the morning before going to work and either running or in the garage lifting some weights, and you're like, oh, it's just as well I did that swimming, looked at that black line for all that time, because it does instill something in you that if you have to do something, well, that you can just grind it out and get somewhere. It's like when it comes to the single, it's a bit more dynamic on the water, but it's not always calm in the sport of rowing. What do you call on when you're sitting on an erg with a sore bum?
Yeah, and that happened a lot. I had to use a seat pad in my day because I don't know if it's just because I got a really pointy tailbone, but I really struggled on the erg, to be honest. To the extent that I couldn't really do an erg without a seat pad, because I'd just get like a really raw bum just over where my tailbone is. But I think that sports like rowing and swimming, where there are some tough elements to it, are actually hugely beneficial to the development of someone, a young person. Like, basically, and not all of them will be able to see it through, and I mean, unfortunately, that's their loss, because they won't develop those values. But I think for the most part, if they've got a supportive network around them, family, they'll find the ability or the strength to be able to see it through and really benefit from it in the long term. So it's something that I always share with parents that are considering getting their child into a sport like rowing, or some people that have navigated it as well, is the value of those experiences. And I don't know, maybe it's a mindset thing, but for me, I learned that if I did, and this is pretty cliche of most successful rowers, because it's just ingrained in the sport. If you put in the work, often you'll see the results. There are exceptions to that for sure, but for the most part, if you put in the work, you'll see the results. And so I just was fortunate to have this mindset, pretty dogged, pretty keen to keep going, because the other side of it, there's some pretty exciting stuff that comes out of it.
Yeah, on that exciting stuff, what is it like as you keep shifting up that peak, and the people in the room get narrower and narrower and narrower and more elite, and then you're in the room and there's people that are world champions over and over again, and you're like, I guess I'm in this room, but I'm in my field, and just because there's somebody else in the room, I've got to try and that's what I've got to live up with. That seems like a lot of pressure to once you're in that high performance, even in the RPC. It's like the reason why we're here is to try and get into those crews. How does that start to weigh? Like I'm in the upper echelon here, and the expectation's high, and I don't know what happens if I don't achieve that. How does that play on you?
I think that environment is a key part of the success of Rowing New Zealand. The centralised program that brings everybody that's in the national team together to one location to train in and out and every day, because it means that someone like myself, and as I'm entering the program as a age grouper, first time representing New Zealand and sort of trying to earn my way up the different teams to the elite squad, you're exposed every day to world and Olympic champions. And we're just so fortunate that we've got so many of them. And I think that just sort of that environment where they bring them all together and we're observing and training against them and pushing against those exceptional athletes drives us to lift our own standard. And then as a result, you get more and more success, and it continues to feed this system, this pool of athletes with these furthered and new Olympic world champions over time. And I think you're right, it definitely brings about an element of intensity and pressure. But I think we notice the difference between a successful high performance program and one that perhaps is not successful. As one, you have that centralized concept where you're bringing together exceptional individuals in a one environment, but also it's an environment that's conducive of success. So, I mean, comparison is the thief of joy is a statement that's often thrown around, and there's definite truth to that. But at the same time, in a centralized program, there can be healthy elements to it. So it's how can you find that good balance where I, as a young athlete, are constantly trying to push myself and be aware of what the gold standard is by comparing myself to the Mahi Drysdale, to the Rob Waddell, and then those in my time, like the men's 8, and before me you had Peter Taylor and Stormuru, and then you had the next group like James Lash and Curtis Rapley, etc. How can you find a healthy balance between me understanding what the gold standard is and trying to aspire to that without it being all encompassing and overwhelming to the extent that you break under that pressure? And I think a key part of that is being really process focused. So setting small goals and understanding what do I need to do today and just today to put myself closer to that gold standard. Trying to reach that gold standard in one go and not thinking about how I'm going to get there is unrealistic and counterproductive. So what can I be doing in today to just get myself that one bit closer? Okay, achieve that. All right, what can I do tomorrow? And it'll be like any sort of shear graph, there's ups and downs, right? Peaks and troughs. You'll get closer and then you'll fall behind and you'll get closer again. And it's how can I do that in a healthy and constructive way with support around me, and going back to that idea of what separates a good high performance environment from a bad one where I feel as an athlete that I have the support and safety around me to aspire to be better, but in a constructive way, and with solid and sound advice to guide me along that process as I fail and succeed along the way. Whereas perhaps a lesser successful high performance program, even if they bring in these successful athletes and try and create a centralized program, if there isn't that environment of support and guidance, then it can still especially when there's going to be a likes of comparison going on, it can definitely fall apart for sure.
For the uneducated, can you sort of go through the sort of landscape of a rowing season, especially as you go sort of winter to club to nationals to elite to World Cups to the World Championships? Can you sort of paint a picture of the ebbs and flows of that? And then also, could you touch on, Toby, if you're in that training bracket or you're at one of those earlier meets and things don't go well, how you sort of rally around and pick yourself back up and get back on the horse, so to speak?
So there's 2 seasons in New Zealand. You've got your summer season, which is our domestic season. So that runs from sort of September, October through to March. And then you've got your winter season, which is the international season. So that's when the national teams will head off overseas at different times to compete at world champs that sort of culminate in that August-September period. So for us in New Zealand, you'll trial for a team, or if it's sort of more at a if it's for a national team or a high performance team, there'll be some sort of trial at the start of that domestic summer period. If you're sort of you're a beginner rower, so you're at a club or at a school, then it's just sort of putting your hand up to be involved, and then training pretty hard of that summer period at different regattas that are hosted, and they'll apart from the small regattas that are regional in the likes of Rotorua or close to wherever your club is spread across the country, the majority of regattas are in Lake Karapiro in Cambridge or Lake Ruataniwha down in the South Island in Twizel. And so you'll just compete at different regattas throughout the season, culminating in your respective national champs. So for the club community elite athletes, that's the general national champs, and for secondary school athletes, that's the well-renowned Māori Cup, which is the biggest regatta in the biggest secondary school regatta, at least in the Southern Hemisphere. So massive, very exciting event to be a part of. And then at the back end of that national champs, there'll be some sort of trial if you're trying to aspire to a high performance or national team to gain selection to compete for the country overseas. So that usually happens sort of in that March, April, May window before you head off. And in terms of success and failure, I guess if you're not going into a regatta being prepared to fail, your career probably isn't going to go very far. Like, you're going to race people that are better than you, at least at some point in time, for probably the majority of your season. And even when you're the best in the world, you're not. It's very difficult to do an Eric and Hamish and stay on top for an extended period of time. So you're probably going to lose again. So you have to be going into racing being prepared to fail, but the key thing in that failure is learning from it. Like, what could I have done better, whether it's in the training or in the racing, to perform better in that race, and then taking that learning away and applying it over your next period of training before you head into the next period of racing, and just rinse and repeat. So it's just constant failure, learning, apply that learning, and then trial again, and then hopefully get better and better, and over different iterations you'll hopefully just get faster and faster. But that key part there is being prepared to fail, and then take away some learnings from it to then apply and be better at the next time. And if you're taking that sort of mindset of continually pushing yourself and being prepared to put in the effort and work out where it is you can improve, it makes it easier and a lot more digestible when things don't go well. Don't get me wrong, it still sucks when you don't go as fast as you want and lose against people that you perhaps even think you should have beat. But if you're just focusing on that race and then taking the learnings away, then it makes it a lot more easier to process and push on once you've had a period to get over yourself and the initial upset.
Yeah, wow. It's like so exciting. You're giving me chills, Toby. Like, the intensity of high performance sport. Like, I've been reasonable at a lot of things and poked my head in the door of elite sport a couple of times, but like, when it comes to that world stage stuff, the margins of errors, the psychology, the training, the little bits are just absolutely all encompassing. What did you do to be a human sometimes?
To be a human is a good question. I mean, part of the reason at the end of my career that things fell apart was because I was too invested. Like, I put too much effort, and I had this this idea in my mind. I followed Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Of the many people I follow on social media, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is one of them, and he talks about this idea of being the hardest worker in the room. And I think there can be real value in that. But I took it to the next level. Like, every session, I was like, I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room. And I think in some context that can be really healthy, even backing that up repeatedly. But for me, it actually became my downfall. And I think it was a mix of just pushing myself too hard and not giving myself enough time to recover, and just sort of forgetting about and putting not enough emphasis on the recovery part of being an athlete, which is just as important as the actual effort part. But then also being a weight restricted athlete, that adds some complexity and difficulty to life as well, right? You already are riding a line sometimes when you are trying to get to weight. So how much energy you expend and how much effort or how careful you are about your recovery becomes even more important. And I wasn't putting the right attention and effort in the right places, and it cost me. And I became into this place of relative energy deficiency. It's this symptom. It's called Red S, or was termed keyed Red S by the International Olympic Committee, and it's mostly common in females. It's part of like this triad where they sort of hemorrhagic. I'm butchering the word. Basically, they lose their period. Their bones become quite brittle, so they're open to like breaks or fractures, and then there's this energy deficiency as well. But it can happen to males, and I'm a classic case of it. And I think there was just a few contextual elements to that, being that dogged mindset and effort, but then also not putting the effort into recovery, and just being all in on rowing. But I still tried to put effort elsewhere. Like, I was very cognizant that at the end of being an athlete, the achievements you realize in a athletic sense are awesome to you, and hopefully appreciated by some, but that doesn't necessarily mean that alone is going to translate well for someone hiring you into a job that has nothing to do with sport. So I appreciated how important it was that I got educated, and I'm really fortunate that Massey University had and has a really good extramural program. So basically studying remotely, and so that's what I did my bachelor's and master's through. And High Performance Sport New Zealand are awesome in the support that they provide athletes in the high performance system. So they provide funding towards tertiary education and non-tertiary education as well, that enables athletes that are pursuing athletic aspirations to get qualified in some capacity. So a lot of my student loan was covered by High Performance Sport New Zealand while I was being an athlete, which is just awesome, right? Because instead of coming out without necessarily or at least relative to other people entering or going through the workforce, coming out of a athletic career without experience in the workforce and a massive student debt, is a pretty tough trend. Well, it's a tough transitioning out of sport as it is, but that makes it all the much harder. So having their support was definitely huge. And then on the other side of education and athletic pursuits, just trying to give back to the causes that are really important to me. So cancer-orientated causes were particularly important. So I've done by all means a small amount, but tried to help out the likes of the Child Cancer Foundation and Canteen and Starship wherever I can. And then what's morphed into sort of athlete advocacy, which is a pretty big part of my life now. So sitting on the boards initially, and like to be the athlete voice, but also just more broadly a board member on the likes of the Waikato Rowing Club and the Waikato Regional Performance Centre, and then being a founding member of a charity here in Cambridge, purpose to improve the economic and health of the people in the general Cambridge and broader area through the sport of cycling as well. So yeah, just trying to lend a hand in a volunteer capacity and gain some experience too along the way, in roles that aren't necessarily just grinding out on an erg or in a rowing boat.
You touched on the cancer, mate. Talk us through finding out you've got a tumour. Like, what is that day like?
Yeah, you'd have to ask my parents, to be honest. My memory is a bit foggy because I was 15 at the time. But I started. Do you want me to get right into it?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
there's some good stories. So early on, I started having these symptoms that naturally none of us put together until we realized my situation. But stuff like losing control of my right hand in particular, well, my right side, but it first was noticeable through loss of control of my right hand, which is through the likes of my handwriting deteriorating, first to an extent that my peers couldn't read it, and then to an extent that my teachers couldn't read it, so they were asking me what I'd written, and then to the extent where I would read something I'd previously written and I couldn't read it myself. And that wasn't through lack of trying. Like, I noticed that my handwriting was getting more and more sloppy because people were pointing it out to me, let alone it was pretty clear. And so I was trying to put lots of effort in and be really focused with it. Sorry, mate. And it continued to just get worse and worse. And then periphery to that, but unpaired, I was starting to lose control of my thumb with texting. So I was hitting the wrong buttons, and it was in the day we had sort of ABC was all on the one button, right? You know, so you had to hit it multiple times just to get a C or a D or whatever it is.
2280 days, was it?
Yeah, that's it, man. 2280 days for sure. And so I'm hitting these buttons either not enough times or too many or missing them completely. And so I just switched to my left hand and just started texting with my right hand, but not really thinking anything of it. And then when things got really bad, like I'd be walking down a hallway and go to turn into a door that was on the left or right, and I'd actually walk partially into the door frame. And I mean, everybody tries to cut it short, right, and might hit their shoulder onto the door frame so they don't think much of it. And so I didn't think much of it too, but it was pretty common. And so all these things were...
Had you lost visual field there or not?
No, not at that stage. Not at that stage. Yeah, so it was mainly coordination issues at that time. And then the headaches started, initially just minor, but progressively building in intensity and painfulness over time, each morning, to the extent where like became this routine of I'd get up and then I'd take some sort of painkillers and then just sit on the couch for a period until the painkillers took effect, and then was able to kick off and go again. And we learned later on that the reason for that was like the change in blood flow and pressure when you go from sleeping to up and at it, was triggering the tumor, and that was what was causing the pain. And then things really came to a head when I was playing touch at high school, because it was the days, I think actually it might be still the case, you're not allowed to play tackle rugby in general classes, it had to be touch. And one of the larger students in my class was coming towards me, and so I grabbed, way too courageous for my size, small fella, grabbed him, and he jumped at the same time, and we went over backwards, and I landed on my head. And then when I got up, everything that at least my brain was telling me that my eyes was seeing was twisting slowly 90 degrees and then flicking back. Oh. So if you can imagine like someone holding like a phone, I was going to say camcorder, that'll show my age, someone holding a phone and turning it to its side and then flicking it back repetitively, that's what was happening. Well, that's at least what my brain thought my eyes were seeing, yet I wasn't moving. So I was like,
did you think it was your vision moving and your ears correcting, or the other way around?
I had no idea, mate. I just thought I'd never been concussed before, at least that I knew of. So I thought perhaps that was what a concussion was. And so I tried to go back into the game thinking, it'll deteriorate and I'll get proper vision in a moment. But then fell over once, twice. Class thought it was funny the first time, less funny the second time. And I got up and was like, I just need to run, get the blood pumping again. So I ran straight into the ground. And at that stage, the class were like, oh, something's not good here. And so they sort of carry me off to the side of the pitch. And I watched for a little bit, closed my eyes, and no joke, I thought, if I hit my head, maybe it'll correct itself. So I on the side, just hitting myself on the head for a brief period, not too much, but definitely not something you'd encourage. And then started vomiting. And so they took me up to the sick bay, and someone had the excellent foresight to construct a medical institute literally across the road from our high school. So I went and saw went to the sick bay and saw whatever medical support we had at the school, which was very limited, and they just put me in a wheelchair and wheeled me straight over to the medical institute. And at the time, one of our family friends was working, and he came and saw me and diagnosed me with an inner ear infection. Didn't take any diagnostics or anything like that. So just acting on what I'd told him, and gave the best assessment that he could, which was inner ear infection, because inner ear infections can result in balance and coordination issues. And then sent me home with some painkillers, and we tried that for a couple of weeks, but the headaches continued to get worse and worse. And things weren't improving. So eventually I went and saw my GP, and absolute legend, guy called Dr. Stuart Lydiard at Haureni Medical Centre. Obviously, it's very stuck in my brain, as you can tell. Family doctor, and he did some pretty basic tests. He held out his finger and got me to touch his finger and then touch my nose and go back again, right? On both sides of my body. Left hand, no problem. Right hand, I'm missing his finger, I'm hitting myself in the eye, and then got me to stand on one leg at balance, left side no problem, right side an issue. And so he actually told my parents, I think he's fine, but I just want to send him to hospital to get some scans just in case. Turns out, as soon as we left, he called in and said, suspected tumour, please make sure you see this guy as soon as you can, get him in proper treatment. So he had an idea of what I had, but out of wanting to protect our and my parents' mindset and well-being, didn't tell us that at the time, but made sure that I got the necessary testing to confirm that. So absolute legend, not only in being able to detect or get an idea of what was going on, but then also the way that he managed that situation. Just kudos, hats off to him. So I went to Tauranga Hospital, and the wait times back then, this is 2007, were still pretty bad. And it took us 7 hours to get seen, and I was pretty hungry. So I said to my dad, can you please go and get me a Big Mac combo? Like, I'd really like something to eat. And I was kind of leveraging the fact that I was sick, and so I was getting a treat. So they got me this Big Mac combo while we waited. And then finally, when we went into the CAT scan machine, they lay me down naturally and put me in the machine. And then there was the change of blood flow again, and it got me quite nauseous. So I'm in this machine, and it's doing it.
Are you in the tube, or are you in the ring?
I think it was initially a CAT scan, and then I got MRIs later on.
Right. Yeah.
Just in the ring, not that tube. Lay down, started to feel nauseous. And I said, you've got you can hear the, Toby, okay, we need you to just lie still for a little bit longer, please. And then you talk back to them. And I said, hey, I'm starting to feel pretty sick. I think I might vomit. And they said, oh, no, Toby, we need to lie a bit longer, please. We haven't quite got the scans that we need. And it turned out that they'd started to scan the tumour. So they'd found the start of it, but didn't have the whole thing. So they really needed me to stay there to get the whole picture. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to be sick. And then just started vomiting everywhere. And man, that's when you see nurses move quick, right? Is because this multi-$100,000 machine has my vomit on it. And to make matters worse, I'm trying to clean it up while I'm still vomiting at the same time. So they're like, no, just go and stand over there and just let us sort this out. And eventually, once I'd stopped vomiting and had cleaned it up, they said, look, we need to get you back in because we need to do some more scans, not telling me why at that stage. But and so I went back in, got a few more scans, vomited again, but we got what we needed. And they then sent me back to my room, and they gave me some drugs at that stage. And so my memory of this period is pretty foggy. But what I can, at least, the best I can recollect is my parents were sitting on the end of the bed. I'm lying down, I'm pretty drowsy, and then the doctor comes in and he sits down, like to the extent where I'm so drowsy where I don't even really remember what was said, but just the doctor saying something to my parents and my parents getting visibly upset, particularly my mum and my dad trying to comfort her. And that's pretty much all I remember from that night or day or whatever it was. And then next thing that at least I remember was that I was in a ambulance heading up to Starship Hospital because I was 15. This was just after my 15th birthday. So I'm still considered a child. So they sent me to the Children's Hospital, Starship Hospital in Auckland. And I'm sitting in this ambulance and there's an elderly lady at the foot of the ambulance and then another elderly lady driving and no one that I knew. My parents weren't there. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, where are we going? Who are you? And I said, it's all good. It's all good. We're just going to pull over. My parents are right behind us. So we pull over there's a cafe called the Copper Kettle between Tauranga and Auckland. And we pulled over in there and I'm walking in with a drip and like a hospital gown or something and looking like a legitimate patient. My parents sort of come in and give me the rundown of what the situation is, and then we're heading up to Starship. Starship, basically what I had was a hemangioblastoma, which is a brain tumor. It was in my cerebellum, which is the coordination center of your brain. It's sort of like the rear bottom part of your brain, and that's what was causing the coordination issues in particular. It had grown to the size of a golf ball and sort of basically just pushed the brain out of the way as it grew, and that's what was causing the issue. So in Starship, I was there for a day before we took me into the theatre, and the brain surgeon went in and basically cut quite a large incision in the back of my head, drilled into the skull, and pulled this tumor out, and then ended up getting it testing for basically to work out if it was malignant or and I've forgotten the other term. Basically cancerous or non-cancerous. Like, does it sort of breach into the cells of the other bodies? Yeah. And fortunately, it wasn't cancerous, so I didn't need any chemotherapy treatment or anything. It's just basically checking that they got the whole tumor, and then I have ongoing testing to make sure that it doesn't grow back, whether it's that one or other ones, because it could be the result of what's a syndrome called von Hippel-Lindau syndrome, which basically means it's a denaturing in one of my chromosomes, and it'll just pop. It could pop off tumors in other parts of my body. Apparently the eyes is a pretty popular place, but there's no testing that can be done at that level to rule it in or out. So I just have to have this ongoing testing to see if something else eventuates. And I'm incredibly fortunate that nothing has since that particular incident. But yeah, basically for me, what that means is, or at least from that point in time, I couldn't engage in any contact sport, or at least it wasn't recommended, particularly because in the early stages where they remove the tumor, the brain doesn't just flop back into place. It takes time for it to sort of fill back that void. So basically there was a period where there was just an empty void within my head. And then in addition, that it's not like they glue the skull back on. And because it's at the rear of my head, they didn't put like a plate on over it. So there's a hole in the back of my head, but obviously something very specific and very sharp would have to go in a very particular place for it to be an issue, hence why there's no plate. But yeah, it just means that there's certain things I can't go diving because of the pressure. It should be the case that my brain has moved back into place now. But yeah, the likes of contact sport or something is definitely not recommended. So yeah.
How about a run around of touch? Can you still do that?
Yeah. Non-contact sports are fine. Last summer I was playing a sport called flag football, which is essentially like the non-contact version of American football. Really good fun. Instead of having the traditional NFL American football games, you've got an offense and a defense on at the same time, and in particular in the middle of the field you got big guys just clashing with each other and high contact. You don't have that with this sport. It's still passing. It's still essentially it's the same game, but to be tackled, someone rips the flag off the side of you, and that's if you've got the ball, that's kind of the end of that play, and it shifts to the next one and so on. But in terms of the downs and a lot of other elements to the sport, it's the same. So I really enjoyed that. It was a cool sport. My hand-eye coordination is not great. So they weren't putting me in at quarterback. They were sort of more leveraging my fitness and my speed, but I had a heap of fun doing that. So sports like that, touch, Swimming, water polo, probably a bit dubious. Although it's meant to be non-contact, you and I both know that that's not the case.
Have you got any tips for ripping the flag there, Toby? I just have started managing the girls ripper team for my stepdaughter, and I'm supposed to coach them to a Subway tournament in a couple of weeks. Have you got any tips for ripping the flag? Because last week, our first game, that was sort of the downfall, was these people just basically running it straight and getting the try because no one could rip.
Yes, yeah. Actually, it'll be interesting if you ask my teammates whether I should be someone giving advice on how to rip a flag. I'd be very interested to hear what they say. I think that at least the tactic I took to it was to try and look at the top of the flag as best you can. So if your hand slips a bit between you reaching out and actually closing your hand, hopefully it's just slipped down a bit of the flag, but still within actual reach of it to grab it. And the other part of it is, well, within flag football at least, the offender has to move around you as the defender if you had that occupied that space first, essentially. So not being afraid to actually just run at them and really get it, because if they collide into you, it's ultimately their fault. So they're actively trying to avoid that. So the instances of collision are often accidents. But what can often happen is if you're a bit hesitant as a defender, then you don't get close enough, particularly as they're coming towards you, and so it just gives them enough room to be able to bounce to the side and use a bit of agility to get around you. So that's the tactic I took to it. But whether it was effective or not, I'll leave it to my teammates.
I'll give it a go tomorrow night. Girls, you've got to get in their way and just grab it. But there's some really good drills you can do, like just creating a pretty small space with some cones, probably 3 meters across, and both you and the offender with the flags and the defender trying to grab the flags go in from one end each, and you basically as the defender have to try and prevent them from getting around you within that box without you having ripped the flag. And so it basically creates an environment where you're in close contact and you're practicing it on high repetition, because you just constantly go in and out as a team. So some good drills that you can do that help with that for sure. Yeah, once we get this tournament team up and running, I think we'll have to get in on a few ripping sessions.
Nice.
Yeah. Mark seemed to think you went to Otago for a little bit. Was that true or not?
Yeah, so I was advised by the director of sport at my high school, Tauranga Boys College, that Otago University had one of the best sports degrees, and that's what I was committed to doing. Like, that's where I wanted to head, because at the time I'd already fell in love with the sport of rowing, so I wanted to pursue it in an athletic sense, but also just love sport more generally. So I thought that would be where I'd want to take my career afterwards as well. So naturally I was like, well, where's the best place to get the best degree and gain the best learnings? And I was advised that Otago University was the best place to do that. So you headed down there for a term in 2011 and had a really good time. Well, had a partially good time. I wasn't a big fan of how cold it was down there. Going to bed and having a damp pillow wears thin pretty quickly, and getting up at 5 a.m. or whatever it was to head down to the rowing club down there, and there's black ice on the road, and so you skid out on your bike as you're biking down there. That also wears thin pretty quickly. There's one incident I'm going down. I was fortunate to be in a Rana house, and it's at the top of a hill, and I'm biking down the hill to head to the rowing club, and there's a left at the bottom, and I turned left and had every intention of going that way, but my body didn't and my bike didn't, and it slid out from under me, and my bike slid literally in front of a truck that was coming to that same intersection. Fortunately, my body was a bit heavier, and so slowed down before I got in front of the truck, but the truck had stopped anyway. But stuff like that, I don't know if Andrew or Tony told you, or if they'd heard, but I also crashed a couple of things while I was down there into the big pylons they have for the shipping containers. So I didn't have a huge fan group at the Togo Rowing Club, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure if you brought up Dickley and Sinclair, your name, he probably wouldn't be too happy. Probably like, oh, yeah, I had to get a lot of sponsorship money out of that because of that guy.
Yeah. They have a award ceremony every year, and there's an award for like it's not the least liked athlete, but to the tune of like the most painful athlete to have in the club, and I won that for the 6 months that I was down there, and they awarded it to me when I'd already cross-credited and transferred to Massey at that stage, but they still gave it to me. They thought I deserved it, and to be fair, I probably did. But yeah, I ended up transferring to Massey because of the benefits of the distance program, and I'd already started to represent New Zealand. So the first time I rode for New Zealand was the under-21 team in 2009 in a double with Armin Svoboda, and then again in 2010 and 2011. And so I'd already started to represent New Zealand, and I knew that, or at least it was definitely made very clear by Rowing New Zealand, that the best environment you could be in to improve your rowing is around the high performance program. And I had this absolute passion and desire to be a rower for New Zealand, to the extent where actually before heading to Otago, I got an offer from Princeton and also was in conversation with the likes of Harvard, and what they needed me to do was to do the SATs, at least to a certain level, to satisfy them from an academic stance, to then give me a sports scholarship. And that was a really, really hard decision to turn those or not pursue those opportunities. But ultimately, it was just this real intense desire to want to represent New Zealand, being avid with the idea of wearing the silver fern. And the love of rowing, and so the best place that I could do that, at least in my opinion at that time, was in New Zealand. And at the time, Rowing New Zealand hadn't established such a good structure for athletes to go and study at an overseas university like an American university and then integrate back into the New Zealand high performance system. It was basically the case that if you went overseas, it was the end of your rowing career and you wouldn't get the opportunity to row for New Zealand, to the extent that Rowing New Zealand made that pretty all but exclusive or explicitly clear. And it was very much discouraged. So yeah, in the end, decided to go to Otago University and then Massey University because of wanting to be around the high performance program, the centralised program here in Cambridge. So I relocated after my 2011 international campaign, which was after the first semester. I just basically stayed up here and have been in Cambridge since then.
So what sort of places did it take you as a under 21, isn't it?
Yeah, under 21 campaign was just Trans-Tasman at the time, and I think it still is. And at least at that time, you raced states instead of the nation. So we had, how many states is there? 6, 7 Australian states that we would race off against in our respective boat classes as a New Zealand crew. And had some success the first year, particularly in the double and the 8 from recollection. And then the 2010 and 2011 years were very successful, managed to win all of our races over in those years. And it's really cool the way they've got it, or at least had it set up. And I think it's still the same, where you get selected as at least at the time there was lightweight, no longer, but you get selected and you compete in a small boat, a medium boat, and a big boat. So for me as a lightweight, I raced in the lightweight double, and then I'd team up with the 2 men's singles, heavyweight singles, and would race a quad together, and then would team up with the 4 sweep rowers and race an 8. So you get to race 3 different boat classes, so you're getting that diversity of experience, both racing in different, not only boat classes, but also boat rowing types, sweep and sculling with the 2 oars and the 1 oar, which is really good for that young age and development. Did that for 3 years, and then sort of from there started rowing at university and under 23 age group level. So had some amazing campaigns there. And so I started with Lithuania in a lightweight 4 for under 23s, and then to Kazan, Russia, in a lightweight double at the World University Games. I don't know when it will next be a reality where someone can race in Russia yeah, but that was an incredible experience, and there's some pretty interesting stories from that campaign. And then it was Italy, an under-23 campaign again, and then Korea, Gwangju, Korea for World University Games. That one went particularly well, so raced the lightweight single and won a silver medal in that, and that's the at least to my knowledge, the first and only time that a New Zealander has won a medal at a World University Games. It's I don't know how accurate this is, but I've read somewhere it's the second largest multi-sport event in the world. It's definitely one of the larger. So you've got the Olympics, but then the World University Games, and it's I think about 8,000. No, I'd have to double check those numbers. A significant large number of athletes competing across all sports. So it's a more multi-sport event as an athlete village, and it's much the same as in Olympic Games. What you've seen is in Olympic Games. It's just the difference is that in order to compete, you have to be also studying at a university. And I think it was in its 25th edition at that time, and so it held every 2 years, the Summer Games, and it's not one that Row New Zealand targets. So we haven't had some of our exceptional athletes that of the past tackle that one. Hence, probably, well, it does lend itself to me being the only one to medal there. But pretty stoked with how that one went, and that led eventually to my elite and my involvement in the elite system. So that's when I went into the summer squad, which is the the elite New Zealand team over the domestic season. And then racing at the final Olympic qualification regatta in Switzerland to try and qualify for the Rio Olympics. And we missed out on that one by 3 placings. So that one was a particularly hard pill to swallow, but an incredible experience nonetheless. So very fortunate in where the places that I've been, for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you said the lightweight stuff, and that ended up being sort of the undoing. How did, like, as I say with Andrew, we mentioned Armin's name, him and Andrew and Armin, they won, I think, a bronze or something in a pair at a similar event. I think it was university rowing or something like that. They went to Poland or something like that. Sorry, boys. just my older brother, who cares? What is that life like? I remember showing up to, I think, a different flat to the one that you lived with Andrew in Cambridge, and when he was just a normal athlete, and you hang around with the likes of Eddie Dawkins or Tony Dodds, who's skinny as shit, but he's not under any weight restriction or anything. He's just going hard to be a triathlete. When you've got that weight restriction in your head, what is it like, those choices after a hard session, to go and then jump on the scales and then finish off and jump on the scales? What is that life like? And can you tell us the weight that you have to be when you check in to race?
Yeah. Before I do, you touched on your brother Andrew. I owe a lot of gratitude to Andrew, because he put up with me when I mentioned that I did a transfer from Otago University back to Cambridge. I'd had one flatting experience, which was for one summer season, and with a bunch of guys that had also never flatted before. So we were all clueless as each other as to what flatting is and how it works. And then the next flatting experience was with Andrew. So he had to put up with me when I was really green as a flatmate. So I owe a lot of credit to him and his partner for putting up with me in those days. And to the extent where too, like when you're going through the rowing system, like most sports, unless there's a huge commercial value in the sport and big commercial relationships, like in you've got your big five, which are rugby, netball, cricket, and 2 others that escape my mind. There's
basketball.
Might be basketball. Can't remember. There's not much money in most other sports. Like, the money comes in for a high performance sport in New Zealand, and they do the best they can with relative to other countries. A lot of money, relative to other countries, not so much money. And so the way it works in New Zealand is, until you're representing New Zealand at elite level, you don't get paid, and it actually costs you to go overseas too. So you essentially either have to be hugely supported by your parents or some other financial backer or have a part-time job, and it makes it really difficult. And so for a period there, I was really struggling financially. And so what I would do is, like, between my campaigns, is I just head back to my parents' place and live and train there for a bit until I then had to be back in Cambridge, could financially afford it. And there were days or nights where I'd have to be back in Cambridge for a session or two or something, and I'd just rock up to their house and just say, can I crash on your couch? And they were really good about it and let me do that far too many times than I deserved to. So big kudos and credit to them. Lightweight life. I mean, there's not a huge number of sports that have weight restrictions to them. So lightweight rowing has just been removed from the Olympic program, and part of it is, there's other aspects to it too, was that it was one of the only sports, bar weightlifting and combat sports, at least to the best of my knowledge. Those are the only other two sporting events that have weight restricted disciplines to them. And a lot of other sports that are constantly competing every Olympic Games for a spot on the Olympic program are saying, how come rowing's got heavyweight and lightweight and they're going pretty similar times? Because, and I'm a bit biased, but lightweights are exceptional athletes, and where the world record time for the men's double, at least in our day, was something like 6:04, I think, and for the lightweight double was like 6:08. So, like, we're talking 4 or so seconds difference. You've got other sports, and understandably so, going, why is there two weight categories? They're almost going the same speed, right? But I mean, yeah, it definitely adds significant complexity to it, and as a result, I would never encourage someone that in their youth, so we're talking sort of high school age, is already bordering the lightweight weight to continue to pursue it. Because as they develop and mature and go through puberty and gain muscle mass, and particularly as they enter into the high performance system and gain strength, and they're going to grow additional mass, which will just push them beyond that age, that lightweight category. So I would never recommend it for someone that wasn't sitting pretty comfortably under that lightweight threshold through high school. Not that it matters so much these days, because you can't race lightweight at high school anymore. But the complexity it adds basically is if you're someone that is in a reasonable proximity of a lightweight weight, which is sort of and for those that don't know, lightweight racing, as males, you have to weigh in between 2 and 1 hour before the race. And as an average, you have to have an average crew weight of 70 kgs. So one athlete can be up to 72.5. But that would mean, depending on how many people were in the boat, someone else would have to be less. Like if you had 2, the other person would have to be 67.5, as an example. And for females, it's 57 kg average. And so as a lightweight, you wouldn't want to ever naturally sit too much over that. You'd probably want to be within a sort of a 5 kg, maybe 6 for an elite, like experienced athlete, weight over that at any given point in time. But the way that you're pretty strategic about it is you're very clear on when you're going to need to hit those weights. So for us in New Zealand, that would be at the national champs and then at our international competitions, that would vary depending on how many we were going to. So basically 2 times a year, unless you're going to multiple World Cups, and then you'd be hitting it a few times during the winter. So being very clear of when they are, so that you can very gradually and strategically drop weight in advance of that, so you're not doing drastic things in the build up to, which has consequences on your performance. So basically it's reducing intake in terms of the calories that you're consuming. I mean, it's classic weight loss, right? Ensuring that the calories out are greater than the calories in as you get close, but doing it gradually as you build into those known time periods. And we're very strategic to the sense that we wouldn't race at lightweight weight over the domestic season until nationals and the trials, because it just puts too much stress on the body when you're doing it repeatedly and trying to live at that weight if you sit over it quite a bit, which most athletes do, because in order to be in the peak physical form, your strength and conditioning coaches, for example, are trying to help you build muscle mass, but very lean and endurance friendly. So the nature of sport of rowing means it's a mix of slow and fast twitch fibers, but basically the optimal amount and type of body mass that's conducive to rowing fast, but at the same time not building in excess or an amount that makes it difficult to get down to weight when you get closer to it. And in terms of mindset wise, trying to do that, it's about being really clear on why you're doing it. Like, what is my why? Well, my why is that I want to be a really fast lightweight athlete that's going to compete at X events, and in order to do that, I need to maintain a certain body weight today. So what I eat needs to be not necessarily restricted, like particularly during those periods where you're not having to get to weight. It's being pretty flexible about what you are eating and enjoying it, but also still being really smart about how you're going about your nutrition. So just eating really conducive stuff to being an athlete, which is a high calorie amount, but in terms of like the nature of the type of nutrients, it's trying to be pretty smart about it, and most people know what that looks like, right? And it's not necessarily sexy kind of stuff, but it's part and parcel of being a weight restricted athlete, which isn't for everybody, and I completely understand. And to be fair, you've got the likes of I'm a short guy, so I lend myself. I am highly doubtful that I would have been a successful heavyweight or competing at heavyweight, because I just don't have the levers to be able to do that. And so my physiology lends itself to being a better lightweight athlete. But there are freaks out there, and I mean that in complete admiration. I talk about the likes of Joe Sullivan and Nathan Cohen. Joe in particular, who's like a few centimeters taller than me. I don't know, for those that have seen him in person will know he's not a tall guy, but
big ears though.
yeah, bigger than some. Yeah. But man, he is an absolute beast. Like he's built like a brick. You know what? And he is just psychologically and physiologically an absolute beast despite his stature. And he's the one that sort of breaks the mold in terms of when you think about a good rower, you think of a Mahi Dries or Ollie Zaida or a Rob Waddell, which are these 6 foot so-and-so athletes that are just towers, and that I got very used to sort of looking up at when I walked around the high performance facility. But then you've got absolute weapons like Joe and Nathan, who I have so much admiration for.
It would have been a wonderful time, Toby. That's for sure. That real purposeful journey. How have you found that sort of translate with your advocacy work and sort of touching base with an athlete? And I'm sure they come at you with 1,001 things, and it's trying to find that purpose and meaning and direction is probably what you need as an athlete that's going through something.
It's sort of going back to that concept we talked about before. We're a collection of our experiences. Like, unfortunately, most athletes in my athletic career, I had some experiences that I wouldn't want others to go through, particularly in the integrity space. So I came across firsthand incidences of people cheating, of people trying to match fix, of abuse, and just those standards or behaviors that don't align with any standard of integrity in sport. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't common, particularly in a sport like rowing, but there were occurrences of it, and it just shouldn't happen at all. And my genuine belief is that the higher the standards of integrity within any sporting environment at any level, the better the experience is for not just the athlete, but literally everybody involved in the sport. Whether you're a coach, whether you're a volunteer, it doesn't matter. If there's better standards of integrity, it means that everybody has a better time, even audience spectators, at least in my opinion anyway. And so having had those first-hand experiences with what I would call breaches of integrity, or at least far below what the standard should be, it made me want to, or it has made me want to make sure that athletes that follow in behind me don't have similar experiences. And so when initially drug-free sport New Zealand reached out to me and asked if I was interested in being there. In fact, actually, I might have reached out to them, to be fair. When they were putting an athlete commission together, I put my hand up and I said, mate, I'm keen to be a part of this. And I'm really fortunate that once they could only have one athlete from one sport. So, and Emma was on it initially, Emma Twigg. Once she rotated off, then I had the opportunity to jump on and really enjoyed being able to contribute back into sport in that way. And it's led to some incredible opportunities. Just last year, the World Anti-Doping Agency has an election every year, and different groups of athletes are selected. So the Athlete Commission for the World Anti-Doping Agency, or known as WADA, is made up of 3 groups. The first group is appointed by the International Olympic Committee and International Paralympic Committee. The second group is appointed by international federations, and the third group is independently appointed by an appointment panel. And the election for Group 2 was last year. So basically, international federations nominated one athlete, and then all of the international federations voted. And I was incredibly fortunate that World Rowing decided to nominate myself, and that then all of the international federations that voted gave me enough votes to vote me in, and I actually ended up getting the most votes, which was truly humbling, particularly given that I'm an athlete that didn't make it their Olympic aspirations and become an Olympian, but hopefully, at least what I hope that they could tell is that I'm incredibly passionate about this space. So they at least I hope that they thought I could add value, and now I need to do that justice.
Yeah, man. So when you look back at, like you said, going to Otago, wanting to be an elite sportsman, but also have a career involved with sport, was the picture of what sports sort of advocacy or sports management or sports involvement post athlete career, was it anything like this? Rubbing shoulders with Richie and Dan?
To be honest, I didn't really know what it was going to look like. Like, I was so all in on being an athlete, but that took the majority of my focus. But I knew that I loved being in and around sports so much that I'd probably find something along the way. I had an idea that it would probably be towards like the high performance end. Like, I'm still very much supportive and involved in it with a non-profit actually that is very much community orientated. So it's specific to disengaged, well, not necessarily disengaged, but disproportionately resourced and supported communities around New Zealand. So it is very much at that bare bones community level, just simply getting people active. But yeah, we're the majority of my passion lies, or where sort of my greatest interest is in the high performance space. And so I thought it would lend somewhere in that direction. But yeah, being on a global advocacy body, let alone a domestic one, in the integrity space, and getting to work and collaborate alongside some exceptional individuals that have made significant contributions to sport was definitely not something that I at least aspired to at that stage. And I'm incredibly fortunate and really enjoying the opportunity to be able to do that now. And then getting to meet the likes of Richie and Dan, man, that was awesome. So the story behind that, there's an incredible family, the Rogers family, and Ness Rogers is the general manager. I'm not sure if that's a formal title, but the equivalent of a general manager for Richie and Dan's charity called iSport Foundation, which they founded during their playing days, I think, and they sit on the board of and contribute to still today. And Ness had a daughter go through rowing, and that's kind of how we met initially. And I, just through a relationship with the Rogers family, got the opportunity to meet Richie and Dan, and that eventually eventuated me being able to fulfill an ambassadorship role with that charity for a period of time, which when I got that email, there was hands up, woohoo type feeling, like that was awesome. And they do some incredible work that they very similar to that charity I was working with before, that they're all around trying to enable youth to reach their potential using sport as a vehicle. So irrespective of sort of what their background is, and particularly making sure that they capture those that perhaps have lesser access to opportunity and resource. They provide them, or try and provide them, with the opportunity to reach their potential. So whether that's by giving them equipment that they need, providing them with leadership development opportunities, connecting them with a mentor. They also worked with a character development expert from the US, a guy called Dr. Ralph Pym, and he's an expert in character development, and I got to work with him in delivering a couple courses for some of these amazing youth that identified. So yeah, that just an incredible experience. I get to also work alongside, and now I'm going to forget her name, but the Lisa Carrington's partner in the K2 at Tokyo, gold medalist as well, exceptional woman, and I feel really guilty I've forgotten her name. But yeah, I got to do some amazing things with that charity, which is an amazing charity for sure.
Yeah, man. And have you managed to have the conversation what a rugby players think of roles?
No, I did get to chat and interact with Richie and Dan briefly on a couple of occasions, but I wouldn't go as far to say it was a lengthy chat and we were best buds or anything like that. And unfortunately, we didn't get to have the rowing v rugby chat. But yeah, I mean, incredible guys, right? Kind of guys that you're just in awe of, and feel really fortunate to be able to interact with, even if it's just for a very brief time.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Your tattoos, and then the boat with the taniwha on it. Are you a big symbolism man?
I'm a big walking contradiction, is what
right.
People tell me. Yeah. A lot of people look at the tattoos I don't often, these days at least, where I'm not wearing lycra, I don't often not wear a top, so they're a lot less obvious these days. But people, particularly back in the day where I was donning lycra, would see the tattoos perhaps before they got an opportunity to meet me, and then would meet me and then go, "Man, you're not the person that I was expecting you to be or thinking you'd be," right? Because yeah, for the listeners out there, I have a fair number of tattoos. Like my back is absolutely covered. That one took in total something like 30 plus hours across 5 or 6 different sessions. And then I've got one on both my sides. I've got the New Zealand, a map of New Zealand with some ferns in it on one side, my family crest on another. So yeah, a lot of tattoos. The one on my back that you referred to is a skiff, a rowing skiff with some wings coming out of what is the rigger, which normally holds the oars in it. And I got it because I knew at the time when I found the sport of rowing that it was something that I absolutely loved and was something that I was going to pursue at least for as long as I could. And even to the extent that I did, it was pretty formative in my upbringing. Like I mentioned, the development of characteristics for youth involved in sport, and the value that being involved in rowing, even at a high school age, was invaluable to me in my upbringing and the kind of person that I became. So I knew that even if I hadn't reached my elite or high performance aspirations, that I'd still have this love for the sport. So I was at least confident enough that getting a tattoo that covered a large part of my body would be something that I hopefully wouldn't regret at the time, and I still don't at this stage. Yeah, painful. I wouldn't recommend it to someone that isn't a big fan of pain or struggles to deal with pain, because it's just literally sitting there getting stabbed for a pretty long period of time. But if you can kind of get into like a meditative state, or you're someone that's able to redirect their attention when something's sort of right in front of you, which being the pain, and be able to redirect it, then it's something that, at least if you're getting a tattoo that takes a bit of time, it's something that perhaps you could be able to sit through. Yeah.
And so then how did the taniwha boat come about?
The taniwha boat, so that was a really cool collaboration. So there's a boat manufacturer in New Zealand called Laszlo Boats. There are a couple that moved over to New Zealand and ended up taking over a company called Kurs at the time, Kiwi International Rowing Skips, that unfortunately the business didn't go so well when it was under that name, and so Laszlo Boats bought it out and took it over, and have done some exceptional things with the company. It's pretty well renowned as one of the, if not the best boat manufacturer brand in New Zealand. and is, to the extent it's making a lot of international skiffs. And in 2014, 15, no, maybe even a bit later, I just developed a real close relationship with them out of sort of interacting and bumping into each other at regattas. And we got talking about how rowing boats are this beautiful, amazing craft and piece of art, really, but it doesn't maximize its potential in the sense that most rowing boats are just one color. Sometimes there'll be a stripe on it, but that's pretty much it. And it's basically this massive canvas that's hugely underutilized. And so we're like, what if we did something pretty unique and special with it and use that canvas as much as it could be used? And so we kind of ran this competition to identify an artist that could come in and basically have their way with it as a canvas. And had this amazing Māori artist that's based in Waitomo submit a application or piece of art that we were pretty taken aback by. And so I approached him and said, look, are you interested in being a part of this? And it's kind of like a collaboration between three groups, like the athlete that was going to row the boat. I had the easiest job. The boat manufacturer that made the beautiful structure of it and all the fine tuning elements, and then this artist. And he came along and me and him sat down and he asked me a bit about my history and what I was passionate about and what had meaning to me. And having lived in Waikato since 2011, when I relocated after Otago and moved to the centralized program here, I developed this real love for the local community here and the region, to the extent that I transferred rowing club as well from Tauranga to Waikato Rowing Club, who I'm still affiliated with today and sat on the board on and etc. And he said, well, if you've got this real connection to Waikato, why don't we build off that? And I'll design this taniwha that goes along the boat. And for those that don't know, taniwha is the mythological creature of the Māori that lives in riverbeds around New Zealand. And so he built created this incredible taniwha that runs along the length of the boat. and it stands out like in a big way because it's just this exceptional piece of artwork. And then I got to race it, which was just so cool. Like getting to walk, I was so proud getting to walk this boat down that had this incredible piece of art on it that I'd been able to be a part of bringing together, albeit a very small part, and then get to race it. And as I'm racing down the different water beds that I rode on, and even just training, just looking at this thing helped remind me of my why and my purpose. So when I was struggling in a session or when it was really hard in the racing, it was an aid in helping me perform. And since that time, there's been other athletes and rowing institutions that have commissioned similar works with Laszlo from across the world. So there's Laszlo boats, your standard Laszlo boats, but then also there's pieces of art that are being raced even on the world stage. Like they're Hungarian is where they came from, and there's a Hungarian athlete that races at World Cups and World Champs and stuff. So it was pretty cool to be a part of that piece of that small piece of rowing. And a rowing initiative in New Zealand that also had that grew into something a bit more than that too.
No, it is a thing of beauty, and you're right. It is a canvas. When they talk about racing, they're talking about the canvas, and yours literally was one that was showcasing art. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, and there was some other athletes that got to row it too. So after I finished rowing, there was a number. Well, even today we have a number of international rowers that come over here and train in New Zealand because we have this exceptional program here, right? People want to understand what is it. I want to get a look at it. I want to be a part of it for a period of time. Just recently, we had the gold medalist from the women's single scull from the Netherlands come over here, and she raced with our own gold medalist Lucy Spores in a double at one of the North Island champs, I think. But yeah, back in the day, we had the likes of the Irish. I don't know if you saw the video of the two Irish lightweight rowers that went viral for a period there. Their interview post race, man, their characters, and they came over and they rowed in it. And then
Paddy McGuinness was good friends with them. He took them hunting and stuff out near Raglan, I think it was. It was actually quite funny. I went down and Talks Bay and interviewed another one time with Paddy, but the whole audio file got absolutely corrupted, so it's never seen the light of day. And it was just before Paddy was about to go back to Ireland and hang out with the lads. So we had a big yarn about his tours across the Middle East on his little rally tour and stuff like that. And lost to the ether. So Paddy and I had a great yarn, but just nobody could hear about it.
Oh, sorry, mate. That sucks. Yeah, Paddy's a real character himself, so I can see those the brothers and Paddy getting on like a house on fire. To be honest, because man, those two are characters as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're so fortunate. Like, I mean, the fact that we have this amazing history in the sport to the extent where athletes from across the globe want to come to the most unreachable place in New Zealand. I mean, exaggeration, but one of the hardest places to get to in the world, at least, and to do it purely to be here in New Zealand and row with some of our athletes and in our environment is so cool. And so I've been incredibly fortunate to rub shoulders with some exceptional athletes in the time that I was in the high performance program while they were over here too, let alone just rubbing shoulders with New Zealand athletes, right? Like going back to your point around this incredible environment and exceptional athletes, it really dawned on me one day where I was doing some training in the high performance center, and Hamish and Eric were doing one of their erg tests, and they both broke the world record. But like it was just like another day. Like there was athletes around them cheering them as they would for any other athlete that was doing it, but they both broke the world record, and they did that multiple times. But I was just like, it was just any other day. I was just doing a session. They're just there doing the exceptional thing on an erg, and it just hit me like what I'm seeing today. Perhaps I'm numb to it because I work in this environment every day, and I see this kind of thing every day. These exceptional performances from these exceptional athletes. But to anybody else, they'd walk in and go, "Wow." Like I just saw a world record broken, and I saw Hamish and Eric simply row on an erg, like when you reflect on stuff like that, it's like, man, I was real fortunate.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. So obviously people will have got to know you quite well here, Toby. I'm sure it's just a little peek in. Where can people sort of follow you, and what sort of places are you going to be heading in the near future? Obviously, going to add another one to the family, but professionally and broadly, where are you taking life in the near future?
To be honest, mate, I really don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah. I'm working out as I go. In terms of where people can reach me if they wanted to, I'm active to an extent on Instagram and LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on there most days, so if you try and reach out to me, I'll definitely get back to you for sure. I'm not a huge poster, but do post a little bit. So yeah, jump on either of those platforms, you'll find me. I don't find that perhaps like at least the circles that I travel in more recently, there's a lot less activity happening on the likes of Facebook and only really use Snapchat with my friends. But yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram is where you can reach me. In terms of where I'm going, mate, like when I was retiring from rowing, I put a lot of energy, going back to the financial struggles of being an athlete, I put a lot of energy into sponsorships. And I was really fortunate to meet the founder and then CEO of a company called .kiwi, which is a domain name service. So basically any website or email that ends in .kiwi, they're essentially paying for a domain name through .kiwi, the same way as you would for .co.nz or .nz or .com, but just through .kiwi. And I met him through my athletic pursuits, and he sponsored me while I was an athlete. And as I was retiring, he heard I was retiring and said, "Look, I'm founding a new company. It's a specialist satellite internet company. Are you interested in working for me?" And I said to him, "Mate, I know next to nothing about satellite or internet. Like I am no use to. I couldn't even tell you what the devices in my house are called that give me my internet." And I'll never forget what he said to me, which was that I'm not offering you this opportunity because of what you know now about the service. I mean, what you know about the service, I can teach you. I can help you learn. I'm offering you this opportunity because of the character that I know you have and the kind of effort that you're going to put in if you take this opportunity up. And it really resonated with me. Like the idea of hiring based on character and potential versus of already known or possessed knowledge, I think is just such a more conducive and constructive way to go about hiring that has long-term benefits. And it's certainly been the case in the hiring processes that I've been involved in since, and has definitely influenced the way that I've gone about it as well. And I worked for his company for just under 6 years, basically being a part of the satellite internet. So we took the startup, or was a startup, to be New Zealand's leading specialist satellite internet provider in New Zealand, which was an incredible experience. But I never intended to go into tech. Like I said, my undergrad, postgrad are in sport, and so is my experience. And that opportunity wouldn't have come about, and I wouldn't have gone hunting for it if it just wasn't for that relationship and that interaction. But in doing so, I found also another passion, which is in the realm of tech. As for where I'm going next, I don't know, to be honest. Like, I really enjoy the governance stuff that I'm doing in sport, and I'll always remain some sort of connection in sport, whether that is limited to governance or actually in a full-time capacity, which I know I'd enjoy just as much. I don't know, and that's kind of like the place that I'm in at the moment is where am I going to next? So I'm working that out as we speak. So that's why I don't have an answer for you. But yeah, anyone wanting to reach me about anti-doping, about sport, about tech, if you want to work together, LinkedIn, Instagram, that's where you'll find me.
And so with WADA, are you bringing that back to New Zealand, or it's communicating to the world, or, like I say, giving that integrity to everybody?
Yeah, as best I can, I'll feed both into New Zealand and out of New Zealand. So essentially, our role in the Athlete Council for the WADA is to act as the athlete voice. So every piece of work that WADA is doing it's ensuring that the athlete voice is accounted for, and it is designed for the athlete. Basically, the athlete is the center of all their work, and it's pretty easy unintentionally to lose sight of that when you have a bunch of administrators that are perhaps out of sport, have been out of sport for a long time, or perhaps have never been involved in sport but have a love for the cause of anti-doping. It's pretty easy for the athlete centricity to be lost in the work that you're doing, and it's completely unintentional and innocent, but it can happen, which is why athlete commissions exist. So my role is as much of feeding into New Zealand about what World WADA is doing. It's as much about understanding from the New Zealand populace, our athletes, and our national anti-doping organisation that I continue to work with. It's understanding what's happening here in New Zealand and feeding that up to make sure that's accounted for as a part of the broader athlete voice that I represent. So what that looks like is, like, we have meetings spread across the year. So for example, there's one in March that later this month that whether I'll be able to go or not will be depending on when number 2 arrives. So I may be attending virtually for that one. But yeah, there's meetings throughout the year in different locations around the world, which in itself is an amazing opportunity, right? Because I get to go and explore some more places while doing this incredibly meaningful piece of work of trying to, as best I can, represent the athlete voice, but then also working closely as best I can with the national anti-doping organisation here in New Zealand, which is called the Sport Integrity Commission, and then just connecting with our athletes. So that's not just exclusively rowers, that's any sport and also at any level. Like, anti-doping isn't exclusive to elite athletes, it's for everyone. And yeah, okay, the sheer majority of testing is for our elite athletes, but anti-doping is for everybody. So it's a lot of responsibility, and as best I can, I'll try and stay connected with the communities that I'm represented.
Brilliant. Thanks, Toby. I'll leave you with my final one. It's just how you're in the waiting place, so it's quite hard to think about flow sometimes. What does keep you in flow, Toby?
What keeps me in flow? I think it probably goes back to that concept we were talking before about being really clear on your why and your purpose. Like, what are you trying to achieve, and why? So if I'm really clear on why I'm doing something, it makes it a lot easier to continue and push through the hard times. Like in the case of athlete advocacy, for example, anti-doping. Like, athlete advocacy is often a really slow-moving beast, right? Because we only meet pretty infrequently, and we're trying to give our opinion to administrators that then have to both take it, digest it, and implement it. And the timeline between them seeking our athlete voice or us pushing it in and then it being acted upon can often take a really long period of time. So you have to be pretty patient and persistent. And it can be quite frustrating at times, but I'm really clear on why. Like, I want to make sure that those, irrespective of the level in the sport, those involved in sport are having better experiences than I did. And I had some amazing experiences that I'm so fortunate to have had, but there are also things that could have been better. So being really clear on that. And then in terms of like career, well, that's a big question. Like I said before, I'm working through at the moment. Like, what do I want to achieve in my career? Where do I want to go? And to be honest, I'm not entirely clear on that myself. I'm working that out at the moment. But once I do work out what that is, it'll definitely be a guiding light that I'll be constantly trying to keep front of mind and refer to be really purposeful and which direction, like where I'm trying to put myself, like the communities that I immerse myself in, the people that I'm working alongside, and the roles that I'm pursuing, etc. Be pretty purposeful about that, and that's kind of perhaps not the flow state that you can imagine when you're sort of in the midst of a very specific effort and maybe a sporting example, but more broadly, I guess that's the flow mindset I take to what I'm doing on a bigger sense.
Yeah, like, and I love it how you brought it back to the lessons learned from that previous life, the collection of your experiences. It's yeah, you're not so much of a contradiction there, Toby. It's good.
I'm glad you think so, mate.
Yeah, awesome, mate. This has been bloody cool, bloody insightful, exciting as well. Just reliving that with you and getting a taste of what it's like to be in some of these environments and some of these places. I've really enjoyed this chat, and thanks so much, Toby, for carving out some time on your Monday evening to have the chat, man. It's been wicked.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, I really appreciate you having me on. Like, I'm sorry I couldn't do it 18 months ago, but when I look at and have listened to the luminaries that you've had on here, I feel pretty humbled and fortunate to be able to be on here. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you. And I'm sorry, I feel like I should have asked you more questions, but yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat, man.
No, it can be a little bit difficult across a virtual way, but no, I think we've done a good job, and hopefully everyone enjoyed this and it's listened this far, and yeah, they'll go back and listen to some of the others that we've touched on as well. It'd be cool. Cheers.
Yeah, Eric Murray, Michael Brake, go and check him out for sure. Yeah.
Legend. Cheers.
Yeah.